The Oklahoma Sooners making some moves for some big-time prospects.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started today. I'm John Williams. He's Jay Smith. The Oklahoma Sooners had a big recruiting weekend for Junior Day, featuring the 2026 recruits in Norman this weekend, and already are reaping the rewards. Sam Spiegelman of Rivals issued a future cast favoring the Oklahoma Sooners for 2026 four-star defensive end Kevin Ford Jr. out of Duncanville, Texas.
John, Duncanville, Texas is the name of the city. That's huge because, I mean, one name that came out of there recently that's been really good, Colin Simmons, the edge / linebacker for Texas. You had Caden Durham, a running back at LSU. Duncanville produces talent, and this is huge because Kevin Ford, a.k.a. KJ Ford, has been to Norman a lot. Like, he's pulled up to like 4 visits last season during in games and, you know, just events or whatnot. He's shown that he really likes Norman and likes Oklahoma and what they got to offer. And Miguel Chavis, Coach Chavis, has been really working hard on him. I love everything the kid has to offer. I went and watched his tape. I put a video out on my channel over on Unfair Sports showing some of the film. The kid's good, John. Like, he's explosive. He has a violent tendency. He hits really hard. He makes me think about, you know, Daniel Koye, our redshirt freshman edge we have now that we expect to break out this year because everybody talking about him. Besides wise, he's going to give you a lot of our Mason Thomas-like traits, being able to get around and hitting people, man. John, I'm excited. I hope that Miguel Chavis can close the deal on this one.
If he were able to come to Oklahoma, I mean, it would be a huge get. You look at what he's able to do on the field, and he can win with his speed and his athleticism. He can win with his physicality. He's a dude that is good against the run, and then he's just ferocious as a pass rusher. He just does everything really, really well. And out of Duncanville, that is a powerhouse program in the North Texas area. And they produce some big-time talents, and he's got the potential to be another one of those big-time talents to come out of there. You look at his offer sheet, and, I mean, it's a mile long. Texas A&M, Oklahoma, SMU, Texas, USC, Penn State, Miami, Nebraska, LSU, Florida, Houston, TCU, Baylor, Arizona State, Texas Tech, Texas State, Marshall, UCF, Oklahoma State, Ole Miss. Like, it's okay. You've got some teams that aren't going to really be in consideration that have issued offers, but otherwise, it's the who's who of college football that are offering and trying to get this kid on their campus as a football player. That's how.
The SEC's heavy in this one too. They desperately would like to get their hands on him. Colorado was big in trying to get him. You know, so like I said, SEC from Florida, Florida State, like you named all those names. It's so many schools that would like to get his services, mainly because they know that those kids out of Duncanville produce. And KJ is going to be one of those too. I can guarantee he's going to be one of those that's going to come up and show out. And he has really good, you know, shedding ability at the line. You watch him come in. I was reading the scouting report from Gabe Brooks over at 247, and he can stack and shed strength. He's got those capabilities. He can play with one hand in the dirt, or he can come standing up, so he can go weak side or strong side defensive end. He's your classic 4-3 edge, and we need more of that, especially as we're preparing to transition from the era of no R. Mason Thomas after this coming season. He's coming back. He's only going to last one more year, and then you're going to have Wyatt Gilmore. You'll have Daniel Koye. PJ Adebaware should be going into his last year, and I mean Taylor Wine. You've got a few more there on the edge. Nigel Smith, if he's able to move inside and out. You've got a few guys on the line, but you're starting to get where you're going to age yourself out eventually. So you need to bring in a few elite guys that could potentially come in and play early and often. And I think that KJ Ford's one of those, especially after seeing some of the film and watching him play. He looks like one that could probably come in and try to fight for time as a freshman.
Well, because when you're playing at Duncanville, you're going up against really good players in the state of Texas. Like, you're playing at the highest level of high school football in the state of Texas, and you're winning, and you're showing that you've got big time traits that are going to translate to the next level. And what you get out of guys coming out of Duncanville, you get dudes that play with a tenacity and an edge. You talk about the traits. The dude plays with a really good motor too.
Yeah.
After his initial rush and the quarterback stepping up into the pocket or evading with his scrambling ability, KJ Ford is still chasing him down. He's still pursuing. He's not giving up after that initial rush. So this is a guy that you just put him on the field and you let him go play football, because he's got that ability to go and be an impact player early on in his career, because the traits are there, but also he plays physically. So many times you see these guys that play defensive end at the high school level, they just rely upon their athleticism and their skill set. Well, he relies on that, yes, but he's also got the physical ability, the physicality, the tenacity, and the motor to go win too when his initial rush might get stopped. Because again, he's going up against some good offensive tackles at the high school level, and he's going to get maybe stoned initially on a block, but he continues to pursue, he continues to fight, and he wins eventually. He's a good player. And I think this is one of those kids that, like a PJ Adebaware, could continue to see his stock rise and the cycle as a 5-star prospect because of what he's done so far in his career. And he's going to have a senior season left and the camp circuit to continue to show out. And he will be invited to a lot of these camps, because again, you look at the list of offers that he's got, and that list is going to continue to grow. And Rivals and On3 and 247 Sports are going to try and get him to come to some of their camps, because they want to put the best against the best. And he's one of the best. And so I'm excited about the potential here. Now, Miguel Chavis is going to have to go up against the who's who of college football in order to win his services. But we've seen him do that, right? We've seen him do it with PJ Adebaware and Danny Okoye in particular. Those were two highly regarded kids coming out of high school in big time recruitments, and he had to win those recruitments. So listen, Miguel Chavis, he's a good recruiter, and he's going to, I think he'll finish this one off and pull it out.
Yeah, and he did a good job on not the 25 class, 24 class. He brought in with like 3 different edges to come in. I mean, he got Wyatt Gilmore, the number 1 player out of the state of Minnesota, to come all the way down here to Oklahoma and play, to add to the Daniel Koyes and PJ Adebaware. So he's got a pretty nice size room. He's made Ethan Downs into somebody that's been coveted as a top 300 potential pick in the NFL draft. He could get himself drafted because of that. R. Mason Thomas has developed. He was a 3-star that, they saw a huge upside on. And when they got him out there and got him healthy, got us 9.5 sacks last season. So that's pretty darn solid. And, so because of that, now that there's so many edges that are out of that room, it's really just R. Mason and now a whole bunch of younger guys. Kevin Ford's going to have the opportunity after next year when R. Mason is gone, as I mentioned. He'll have some opportunity to come in there and play, but you always want to get your hands on some consensus and composite 4-stars that are there within the top 250 in the country. And like you said, once the circuit goes down and he's traveling around to all these camps and he's going up against some of these top offensive linemen, especially top tackles, because there's actually a pretty good list of tackles in this class. 26 is pretty stacked. And I think Felix Ojo is one of those that I know Oklahoma's after, and Texas is definitely after as well. He may see him in camp and be able to, if he wins some moves against him, a guy that a lot of people regard as a very, very high ceiling player, KJ Ford may be able to find himself being moved, like you said, up into that top 100 echelon and potentially moved up right there into the top 50 if possible. But I do think that he's going to be one of those players that's going to grade out very well as the camp circuit goes on, especially throughout the summer. When we see him at some more camps here at Oklahoma, hopefully we get him at Champ U Barbecue and all of that. You say, hey man, let's go ahead and commit before the season starts. You want to think about it, and we can go ahead and start working on the next year.
That's a great way to win over a recruit, is with a little barbecue. It always wins.
Oh yeah,
over.
food.
So, give me a little brisket, a little smoked turkey, some baked beans. You got me. I'm sold. So we're going to talk about what Paul Finebaum had to say most recently. We're also going to discuss some defensive coordinator candidates. And I'm a little more intrigued by the guy that is being buzzed to Oklahoma than maybe some other people are. We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature is always fun, allows you to be able to, pick the positions and stuff as the game goes on. We can see if Jalen Hurts is going to get a touchdown. We can see if Saquon Barkley is going to get one. You can bet more or less. And it's super easy to navigate. And you can place that $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets from the Super Bowl if you win. That'll be icing on the cake. So download the app or head to FanDuel.com and get started. Bet just $5 and you win. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59.
Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. ESPN's Paul Finebaum had some things to say about Oklahoma, considering them one of the more disappointing teams in 2024. Obviously, we were more disappointed than probably anybody. But he says that the program is facing a critical year. I think anyone who follows OU knows that. You can't waste time in college football. And this year was a colossal disappointment, even with the Alabama win. Any thoughts on that, Jay?
I mean, he's not wrong. I mean, did he have to really say it again? I mean, he's been coming after Oklahoma for like the last 3 weeks, it feels like. Every time we look up, there's something being stated by Paul Finebaum. I'm like, come on, man. Can you throw us a bone here? We had one major problem on this team last season, and it was the offense. What did we do, John? We got an offensive coordinator, and we had him bring his quarterback. Mm-hmm. Should that fix all the problems? Yeah, I actually expect that to fix about 95% of the problems because John Mateer is also a quarterback that likes to get out there on the move, running for over 800 yards in a season. I mean, offensive line is going to be fine. We've got a 3 deep that's, if healthy, we should be okay. If we get past 3 deep, then, hey, I can't say anything at that point. Right. But the line is a lot healthier than it was going into the season. We shouldn't, knock on wood, expect to have 6 offensive linemen as well as 6 wide receivers out. I know we beat that drum a lot, but that's just the truth here. And so Finebaum's got to have something to talk about all year, for the next 6 months as we prepare for the season. And I totally get it. One of the things to keep in consideration is we've also still got a spring portal coming up, John. So to me, I believe that the team has put together what they need to, but I do expect us to go shopping when all these other players that have went to these teams decide that, I don't want to be there no more.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where Oklahoma is going to be riding this wave of disappointment all offseason. Yeah. And it's going to be up to them to prove that last year was the aberration that it is. The injuries are the injuries. It's part of the context of what 2024 was about. You cannot talk about the 2024 season without talking about it. It is what it is. I know people don't want to make excuses, and injuries aren't an excuse, but when they are as many as Oklahoma suffered last season, it's got to be a part of the discussion. Will that matter in 2025? The injuries are going to be a discussion because you're waiting on Jaden Gibson to come back. You hope Deion Burks is healthy for spring ball. Everything looks good because he's out there in workouts. His issue at the end of the season was a concussion. He got hit real hard in the Missouri game, and then had to miss
right across the middle
game. Yeah, it got hit real hard. So there was no sense in playing him against Navy. I didn't think they needed to risk that. No sense in putting another hit on him in a game that, listen, it matters, yes, because you want to get a winning record, but it doesn't matter to put your best playmaker at wide receiver at risk in a game against Navy. So, but if you have him out there and he's good for 12 games next season, I'm expecting a big-time performance from him. If the offensive line is anywhere better than it was last year, I think it's going to be better. But also you're going to have a quarterback that I think is going to feel more comfortable doing things in the offense than what Jackson Arnold was in 2024. Because the offense, it did not adjust for the lack of personnel that they didn't have. And so part of the issue that Jackson Arnold faced was the guys he was throwing to, okay, maybe they're not very good. And the guys that were blocking for him at the time, they weren't very good. but they were getting better as the season went along and still have a lot of growing that they have to do. But everything on offense was a lot because the personnel that you had available just wasn't ready. And that's part of the story of the 2024 Oklahoma Sooners. Are they going to have that same kind of injury bad luck in 2025? I highly doubt it. A lot of that stuff is going to regress to the mean. You're going to have injuries. That's part of the game of football. But there's no way they're going to have as extensive an amount of injuries as they had this last season. If not, they're truly cursed.
Yeah, it's truly extremely hard to believe because it's a rarity for a team to even have the amount of injuries we had, let alone for it to happen 2 years in a row. For it to happen 2 years in a row, there's got to be something else going on that I'm calling conspiracy. There's something else happening in the background that caused this to go down because, I mean, last time we saw something like this was 2009. That was the 1 year that Oklahoma was completely snake bitten, finished season 8-4. Thank goodness. But you had Trent Williams playing center, right? Yeah, you had an all-pro, all-American tackle having to play center because you ran out of bodies. And I mean, that was also a transition year for Oklahoma. That's when you started moving on into new quarterbacks. I mean, you know, Sam Bradford's gone and you got a young quarterback, Landry. You got all this young movement going on at that point. And so, yeah, you were trying to figure things out and, you know, unfortunately, everything fell apart when Sam Bradford's shoulder got knocked out against BYU. So it happens. For us now, the bigger problem and what makes it more of a colossal disappointment to me, especially for Brent Venables in Oklahoma, is we had to figure all this out while in our first year in the SEC.
Yep.
That is not where you want to try to figure all this stuff out. That is not the place where you want to try to learn and see, okay, I think we can make this work. Nah, you don't want to do that in the SEC your first year. You want to walk in the SEC with a little bit of stability. You're going to have a lot. Just a little bit. And the good thing was the defense was the stable point that we had. And as we said, John, we brought in a quarterback. We brought in an offensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator brought his quarterback, who they've both been working together for 2 years. If this was a situation where we were expecting Michael Hawkins to try to figure out this offense in a year, pump my brakes and be like, I think we'll be okay, but I don't know what it'll be. This dude's ran the offense for 3 years. We'll be fine.
Yeah, I think it's going to be just fine as well. So Finebaum said at the end of it, he said, I lost the quote. They're facing a critical year. They can't afford another bad year. So what does a good year look like for Oklahoma in 2025, Jay?
Ooh, that's a good question. Good year for Oklahoma.
They've got to be in the playoff discussion in my mind.
It's a fair point. I say 10 wins.
November minimum. As a playoff contender.
Yeah, good year is 10 wins. I think that calms a lot of people down. Finish the year 10-2, 10-3. Sure. I think that actually quiets a lot of people. Because the good thing is if you win 10 wins, you get 10 wins. If this Oklahoma Sooner team gets 10 wins, that means that you knocked off a lot of teams that were potentially looking at playoffs, and that helps you a lot. Because then you have to have a win over a Michigan, a Texas, an Alabama, LSU, South Carolina, Tennessee, Missouri, all these schools that are really being considered for the playoffs themselves. Ole Miss. You have to have knocked off majority of them with only 2 losses. And I mean, if you give 2 losses, not home games, you got to make them on the road. I'd say probably Alabama and Tuscaloosa gets their revenge. Sure. Wouldn't be too mad at them getting their revenge. Maybe where else on the road? South Carolina on the road? Probably wouldn't be losing my mind too much on that. But if you get all the rest of them at home and you get those wins as well as Red River, who's complaining?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of potential there. So, I mean, you're saying Oklahoma's kind of got to enter the final month of the season or the last 3 weeks of the season coming out of the bye somewhere like 8-1, because you finished the season with Bama, Missouri, and LSU.
Yeah, 8-1 is what you need to be. You need to be going into the Alabama game 8-1.
Yeah,
if you don't want people to lose their minds.
Right. So what would be kind of the minimum win total for you though, for us to feel okay? Brent Venables, you get another year at Oklahoma.
For me today, I'm still sitting on honestly 8 to 9 wins right now. That's still my number. And I say that mainly because based upon the way the schedule is set, a lot of teams are breaking in new quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
You really only have, quote unquote, Texas is kind of breaking in, but they're not. Arch has played enough snaps to me, makes me feel like he's not fully being broken in. So I'd say first time in command, but Tennessee's got their returning quarterback. Let's see, Missouri, Alabama. Let's see, it's Tennessee, LSU, and Texas are the only ones that are actually playing with the same quarterback. Everybody else is breaking in new ones. South Carolina. So there's your 3 schools that are bringing back their quarterback. The rest are all working in somebody new.
Yep. There's a lot of turnover in the conference at quarterback. And I like Oklahoma against Nico even. You know, I think they played Nico pretty well. They gave up a couple big plays, and that was about it. Yeah. I mean, aside from 2 big, catch and runs, they did a pretty good job against Tennessee's offense, and they're not bringing back the same offensive line. They're not going to be bringing back Dylan Sampson that killed him in that game as well. So
Squirrel's gone.
I mean, yeah, Squirrel's gone. This is going to be a very different Tennessee team. I think it's still going to be a good team. Don't mix up my words here. I think it's still going to be a good team, but it's going to be very different. But you're looking at Ole Miss is without Jackson Dart. Obviously, Texas is going on to Arch. Alabama's moving off Jalen Milroe. Missouri does not have Drew Cook. So it's going to be a very interesting.
They got Drew Pribula. Drew Pribula.
Pribula.
Yeah, Pribula.
Yeah. It's going to be one of those things that the more we say it, the worse it gets over here on Locked On Sooners. But for me, I got to see them get to 9 wins. To me, 9 wins puts them in the playoff discussion more legitimately than some of these other 9-win teams were in 2024. Because right now, if you look at Oklahoma's schedule, they got 7 teams that are likely to be in the top 25 to start the season on their schedule. And with a Missouri schedule that is cheeks, that team could very well be ranked by the time Oklahoma plays them. So you could have as many as 8 teams ranked. And a lot of people are giving Auburn a lot of love. So you could have 9 teams potentially ranked in your 2025 schedule. And if you go 9-3 against 9 ranked opponents, wow. I'm saying, but I'm not saying.
So you're saying there's a chance.
I'm saying there's a chance. But I'm saying for me to feel satisfied about 2025, you got to win 9 games.
Yep. I agree with you there. That's a good number. We'll keep it safe.
Fired if he wins only 8? Probably not, but I'll still feel less than satisfied.
And then at that point, John Mater needs to be coming back for another year.
Agreed. We're going to discuss defensive coordinator candidates. I'm going to tell you why I'm kind of intrigued by the name that's being floated, maybe a little bit more so than you are. We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile apps. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Jay, the defensive coordinator search is still ongoing after Jim Knowles decides to go to Penn State. Where do you think Oklahoma goes from here?
There's a couple of options that's been floated around, but I'm going to be honest. I don't think Oklahoma does anything until after closer to the spring game. It feels like at this point, should we be in a rush? Is there really a reason to rush in to get a defensive coordinator? I mean, the rumors have been floating around Russ Goodwin coming over as like a analyst. as he comes from Clemson, because Clemson let him go as defensive coordinator. Wes wasn't terrible at Clemson as DC, but he wasn't as good as he was when he was working with Brent Venables. Now he's available. Oklahoma can bring him in as an analyst, because then at that point, the buyout pricing that, Wes is getting from Clemson maintains, because he didn't quit. They fired him or relieved him of his duty. So they have to pay him his buyout, but a lot of those contracts, they encourage you to get a job. So him getting a job as an analyst is typically good enough, but you may want to find a linebacker coach. And I've been floating Brian Odom for a while. He's now an interim DC down in North Texas. He was at USC and in Oklahoma, and he did bring in a lot of linebackers here. I think he's one to consider, but there is one name that has been going around. The Oklahoma Breakdown was talking about it. What do you think about him, John?
So first, I think the Brian Odom idea is a good one. So even if I like where we're about to go, I think Brian Odom is a coach that's well worth bringing back as a linebacker coach. He is a good recruiter, a good developer. Now, Nate Dreiling, that's a name that's kind of been floating around. He's the defensive coordinator at Arkansas State, just recently hired by Butch Jones to be the defensive coordinator there. Was at Utah State, was the interim head coach there. Prior to that, though, he was at New Mexico State. Now, I get it. All these states, and not one of them being a Power 4 state school. I get where you're coming from. But who did New Mexico State beat in 2023 that creates some intrigue? That's the Auburn Tigers.
Yeah, wasn't that the Diego Pavia-led Auburn Tigers?
That's the Diego Pavia-led New Mexico State team that beat Auburn.
Yeah.
And that New Mexico State defense held Auburn to how many points, Jay?
It was like 10 or something like that?
10 points. So this is a dude that's got some defensive coordinator chops, and I'm really, really intrigued by it. And I think that he could be a really good hire. Also, who else did he beat? Rich Rod and Jacksonville State. Held them to 17 points that season. Also had a good win over a good UTEP program. Beat Sam Houston, who's been a program on the rise. Beat FIU, held them to 17 points. The only significant losses they took were to Liberty, a Liberty team that was cooking back in 2023. So and with Caden Salter, who was really good. So the Nate Dreiling thing, this is really fascinating to me. And I'm intrigued by it.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by it too, because he's 34 years old and he's from Victoria, Kansas. So you've got a guy that's from the area, from the Midwest region. He knows this area, played at Pittsburgh State, which didn't we just get a tight end from Pittsburgh State?
We did.
And Pittsburgh State's a powerhouse in the D2 market. Just understand that they're a powerhouse. They win a lot. And he played in the NFL, spent some time with the Packers, the Chiefs, and he played linebacker. So he's a linebacker that got a chance to play, played a year in the NFL, and he went into coaching. He was a grad assistant at Kansas. He's an analyst at Oregon. So he's been to a few places, but then he got an opportunity right into DC world at New Mexico State. That was his first job, and he, did pretty solid there. And then Utah State, he was the DC, and then he was the interim head coach. Whenever, that coach there got fired, and then he got the DC spot there at Arkansas State like January 3rd. So if Oklahoma's thinking about going there and snatching him up from them, I mean, it's going to be something quick. It's kind of funny though at the same time.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. And it's just the way of the college football world. It kind of sucks. It sucks when it's you, but it's kind of the way it works. I think it's intriguing because it's another young, promising, up and coming, coordinator option, promising young assistant that is showing that he can have success, and he can have success against SEC teams because he did it against Auburn. And that game right there got a lot of those guys at Auburn, got them to Vanderbilt. I think everybody saw that, and it was a beatdown. It was like a 3-score win for New Mexico State. So it's a program that was able to do some things, but Nate Dreiling was a part of that. I mean, he was a huge part of that. He held Auburn to 10 points. Now, it may not be the Cam Newton Auburn Tigers, but if you're able to do that and go put on that kind of beatdown, you got some
on the road?
On the road? In their place? You got some chops.
Look, we talk about losing to 4 acronym letter schools at your own place and how bad that is. That that's an indictment on our friends over there at Auburn. And New Mexico State put up a great fight, and they beat the crap out of them.
Yeah.
Can be mad at them for that.
Allowed fewer points than what Oklahoma's defense did.
Yeah, it's true.
So
it's true.
There's something to this Nate Dreiling guy. I'm just going to say that. And I know y'all are going to accuse me of sitting here just trying to find the bright side and sunshine pumping everything. That's fine. But you cannot discount that. You got to look at that result and have to be somewhat intrigued. So, and again, if Brent Venables is looking at this dude to potentially be an assistant on his staff, whether as a linebackers coach or as the defensive coordinator or a co-defensive coordinator, along with Todd Bates and Jay Valai, then there's something to this guy. Brent Venables isn't just putting any guy on his staff as a defensive assistant.
100% agree. And it looks like base defense wise, they ran a 3.35 while he was there.
So, well, I don't know. It's going to be intriguing, man. It's going to be fascinating. I think they could go any number of directions. I think they want to probably have this figured out. So as they recruit linebackers, guys aren't having to guess, okay, who's going to be my position coach? But I think this is going to be, it's going to be fine. They're going to find a guy. Brent Venables knows defense. He knows what he's looking for. And even if you go get a 3.35 guy, a lot of times defensive coordinators, they want to have guys from various backgrounds because, hey, if Brent Venables is a multiple dude and he's got a guy that brings a 3.35 with him, then they can build off each other. They can, learn from one another and use that to benefit the defense and go from there. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Again, we're free and available on all podcast platforms, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports and go check out his channel covering all of college football and the Oklahoma Sooners over at Unfair Sports. Check out my work over at SoonersWire.com. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. But until next time, we'll continue to dig into this 2026 recruiting class, takeaways from the recruiting weekend that was, and we'll have more to come on Locked On Sooners. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. Boomer
Sooner.